What up and welcome to the Rival Fantasy Week 15 Risers episode. I'm your host Neil Maligno, and the goal of this episode is to talk about players whose fantasy value is on the rise. The players discussed in this episode may be good trade targets for you, waiver wire ads, must starts, and more. I keep these episodes quick hitting. If you want longer interactive content, subscribe to the channel, join our weekly live episodes, including our Sunday Start State Advice live stream that kicks off at 11:30 a.m. every Sunday. It will actually be on Saturday this week at 10:30 p.m., just a slight schedule change, but giving you a heads up. Drop your questions in the comments. No question goes unanswered here at Rival Fantasy. Before we go ahead and start and jump into the players, starting with quarterbacks, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video. We appreciate your continued support. Now let's go ahead and get into the quarterbacks. Bailey Zappe was given the starting job for the Patriots, and while his first game wasn't great, Week 14 versus Steelers, Zappe gave the Patriots offense the lift it needed. Zappe finished as the QB7 with 240 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns, where Mac Jones had only thrown 3 touchdowns once this season and 240 yards or more only twice. Next up for Zappe is the Chiefs, who are tough but a beatable defense, so I expect him to continue his rise. Now, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but New York Jets quarterback Zach Wilson has made the risers list for Week 15. Wilson was a top 12 quarterback in Week 14 with 301 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Wilson was able to get Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Tyler Conklin, others producing in the game, and now we just need to see him repeat it for Week 15 versus the Dolphins. Jerick McKinnon is the Chiefs running back to roster in case Isaiah Pacheco is once again out in Week 15. I said it on the live stream last week and I stand by it. I don't care about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. McKinnon is the guy if and when Pacheco misses time. If you need a reminder of what McKinnon can do, just go back, look at last season, Week 13 on, and refresh yourself on McKinnon's upside in the Chiefs offense. Ezekiel Elliott was the #1 running back in PPR scoring for Week 14. Let me say that again. Zeke Elliott was the #1 running back in PPR scoring in Week 14. 140 total yards, 7 receptions, and a receiving touchdown. Elliott was playing like it was 2018 again. With Stevenson still absent from practice, we can assume Elliott will be the lead back in Week 15 versus the Chiefs. He's a riser in the fantasy playoffs. Zay Flowers has finished as a top 10 fantasy football wide receiver in his last 2 games with over 20 fantasy points per game in Week 12 and Week 14. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens have a decent opponent the rest of the way, so Zay is rising at the right time to make fantasy managers happy in the playoffs. Now, Zay also gets involved in other ways, not just through the air, so the Ravens' craftiness increases his fantasy value. If we're giving Zach Wilson the nod as a riser this week, then you know his star wide receiver Garrett Wilson belongs here as well. Garrett has gone through hell with his quarterbacks as soon as he lost Aaron Rodgers, dealing with throws from Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle. Garrett had his first top 10 finish of the season in Week 14 and is sitting at wide receiver 22 on the season in PPR scoring. With the Dolphins and Commanders coming up the next 2 weeks, Garrett has the potential for a couple more top 10 weeks left in him this season. Davis Allen is the Rams rookie tight end who only had 1 catch the entire season. Week 14 came around with Tyler Higbee out, and Allen stepped up with 4 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. Now, Higbee will likely return in Week 15, but Allen showed enough skills within this offense for us to trust him if Higbee does miss time again this season. For Dynasty, Allen gets even more of a bump as a riser for a position that we need more talented players to show up in. Jimmy Graham has officially reached Donald Parham territory for me at this point. Now, is that a ton of value for us in fantasy? Not necessarily, but at a position at tight end where I mentioned weekly that a touchdown alone gets us into that starter conversation, Graham is literally a 1 target, 1 touchdown kind of guy, but he's done it 2 weeks in a row now. So if you're in a bad spot at tight end, especially if you're in a 2 tight end league, you can do worse than Jimmy Graham. As our bonus flex of the week, Chase Brown from the Bengals actually had a top 10 running back performance in Week 14, in a big part thanks to his 54-yard touchdown reception. Still, Brown has had more carries the last couple of weeks, and we're hoping that the Bengals continue to get him more work on both the ground and through the air. As the workload continues, he'll gain more flex value, and if Mixon gets injured, then he really climbs as a riser. That's it for today's episode, but I know you're looking for more fantasy content. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Catch our new content weekly, plus our live streams every single week. We do more than just fantasy football. We talk about all sports. You can also follow us on social for all the latest app updates, promos, and latest news in sports at Rival Fantasy on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And of course, download the Rival Fantasy Sports app to play season-long leagues, challenges, bingo. It's so much fun. It's your one-stop shop for any fantasy sports diehard, so go check it out. You can either download the app, or if you're more of a PC guy, iMac, you don't want to mess with the app, go ahead and go to rivalfantasy.com. You can play right there on the website. That's it for week 15 risers, guys. I am Neil Maligno. Again, this is brought to you by Rival Fantasy, and we are out.